It's good to be back with you all again this morning under very wonderful circumstance to have your new pastor in place. By the time church is over today, I'm going to formally install him as the pastor of Chi United Church here, and it's just a privilege for me to be back with you again on this day. Anita wanted me to send her greetings to the many of you who know her, and she'll be getting on a plane in just a little bit this afternoon, heading back to Indiana, where she lives until Thursday nights, and I pick her up again at our airport in the area to spend the next weekend with her. She loves, she works for our international headquarters for the Wesleyan Church. Give the context for that. She's actually, for the Wesleyan denomination, the executive director for all of our church planting around North America, as well as all the discipleship ministries from children through teens through adults. All of the materials that you use, the inspiration for home groups and things like that flows out of her division out of the headquarters. And so she loves churches like this one, as do I, that are hungry for some of the kind of ways that we were even singing here this morning. We sang a song. And I'm always nervous, Pastor, about singing songs because I feel like that God takes seriously every word that comes out of my mouth, whether it's a prayer, and we're going to talk about a dangerous prayer in just a few minutes, or whether it's even a song that I sing. When I'm singing an act of worship like we did this morning, I get a little nervous about myself because, especially if I know the song, my mind can drift, my mind can wander, and I wonder if every once in a while that the Lord doesn't, if he could actually come right out and ask us, with a loud voice, did you even hear what you were just singing? And so we just sang this last song, right? Show us your glory. I don't even know if we actually meant what we sang. I mean, I'm not even sure we fully understand sometimes all that we're singing. And I get sometimes nervous to wonder if the Lord actually decided to honor our request, like that we just sang. I wonder if we would go, oh, wait a minute, I didn't quite mean that, or that's a little much. And so just in my own heart, I'm becoming much more careful these days as I continue to grow in my faith in Jesus Christ. Becoming much more careful about paying attention to what it is that I'm singing. These songs were beautiful. I love that second song. It's one of the older worship songs that y'all have here. But in that song, Matt Redman said, I've made worship about other things. In fact, I'm in a lot of churches. I have 104 churches that I superintend as district superintendent. And even in some of our Wesleyan churches, the worship is all about you. People. And it's wonderful to sing about what the Lord has done for us. But worship, I think, is who the Lord is. And to magnify him and lift him up. There's sometimes I leave a church service and I feel very loved and celebrated by the songs that we sang, We sing a lot about God did this for me, he did that for me. And those are good songs to sing. But if that's all that I've said that Sunday, I don't feel like I've actually said to the Lord, and I love you, and I worship you, and you're an awesome God, and will you show us your glory? So, I prayed for you as I was driving down the Blue Route this morning. I prayed for Pastor Eric. I prayed for this congregation, that you would all take to heart what it is the Lord's saying to this church at this moment. And I asked the Lord, when I found out that I'd be preaching today, Lord, what do you want me to share? What do you want me to say? And he immediately directed me to the 139th Psalm. So if you have a Bible or the one in the pew in front of you there, go to the 139th Psalm. And I don't know if you've ever been through an annual job performance review before. In your job, have you ever sat through where your boss, your supervisor, has to do an annual review of how well you've done? I dreaded those growing up. I never looked forward to them. Part of it was because I wasn't sure I could trust the person doing the interview. Right? I wasn't confident that that woman or that man had my best interest in mind in the process, and all they were thinking about was just the bottom line of the company or whatever, and not being terribly concerned about me and my well-being in the process. it takes, to me, it takes a measure of trust when I'm sitting in a performance review. It takes a measure of trust for me to not just hear what the person's saying about me, but to take it to heart. To take it from my ears and to push it down into my heart, where it would reside and start working its way out in my actions, then I'm not going to do that for just anybody. I'm just not going to let a person that doesn't have my better interest in mind talk that way about me and me take it to heart when I'm not sure I can trust that person or respect them. There have been times when I'm not sure that I respected the person that was giving the review. And it made me suspect about what they were saying about me. And it would get complicated. I'm sure you've been in those environments before also. But what the purpose of a job review and where they're doing a performance review, and some of you that are just starting out in your world of working, you need to know this. These job reviews are not necessarily just to put you in your place. The purpose, the formal purpose of a performance review is to see how well you align with the mission and the output of the company. Are your skills, your giftedness, and your passions aligning with what's needed in order to produce that widget that the company that you work for produces? And if not, you either need to do the hard work to get aligned, or to get out of the company and go to a different company that is a better fit for you and you're a better fit for them. I worked for a few months underneath the twin bridges, the Delaware bridges at DuPont's. And I worked there for a few months, and I remember my 3-month review. What that guy was saying was not what I thought I had done for 3 months. Now, I was only 18 years old, and I might be dumb now. I was really dumb back then. And I remember sitting there at the end, walking out, devastated, thinking, maybe he had the wrong file. Maybe he was talking about, because I do know a couple of the other guys that sounded like that's who he was talking about. Turns out he was talking about me. And I finally asked one of my buddies that I was working with, I said, this is what they said. Is it true? And they were like, you mean you don't know that? Why am I the last to know these things? You know, and I remember that job review thinking, my goodness, I'm 18, I've got a whole lifetime of this stuff? Where they're going to once a year or once every 3 months tell me how I'm doing and where they think I need to improve. And the last place I thought I needed to improve was in the area that he made the first place that I need to improve in. And I'm thinking, good grief. Well, to add on to that, the fact that I'm not just a worker for a company, I'm also a husband. Now, I do not recommend annual marriage reviews, especially if you ask your spouse to do the review. It's already, you know, married couples, there's already inherent issues, and then to sit down and subject yourself to your spouse and say, go ahead and do a review of me. And oh my goodness, I mean, you really would have to trust that person, right? In other areas of your life, being, in my case, a father or a grandfather, sit down and ask your kids, go ahead kids, review me now. We're going to do this annually, by the way. You know, it's a kind of a crazy idea, but my question is, in my own life, unless I'm willing to honestly listen, not to my own review of myself, because doesn't the Bible say in Jeremiah, I think it's in chapter 17, that the heart is deceitful? You know, when I sat for that 3-month review at DuPont's, I just could barely believe that the guy was talking about me. I had a completely different view of how well I did for the last 3 months. And I learned a powerful lesson back then that I've never forgotten. The heart is deceitful above all things. It has a way of tricking you, motives, and all kinds of ways. And so when you subject yourself to another person's opinion, there has to be some measure of trust that if you're going to place your life and your opinion and your reputation in their hands, and they're going to review it for you and speak into it. But you have to trust them a little bit that their mission in that review is not to crush you and shame you and tell you how terrible you're doing, but that you want to grow. And I think that early on in my relationship with Anita, I don't think I could have handled an annual review done by Anita about how well I'm doing as a husband from her view. I don't think, not because I was doing poorly or not because I didn't trust Anita. Maybe it's more about when I looked at myself, I tended to think more highly of myself. And I had just enough of a self-image problem that I wasn't confident that I could necessarily handle anything less than a glowing annual review. I've grown a bit since then. Part of the growth actually came out of this particular prayer that we're going to look at this morning. I've read through the scriptures looking for what I call dangerous prayers. If you want a more pleasant word, transformative prayers. Prayers that if you pray them and you mean them from your heart, they will actually change you in some way. I've come across about 20 of those kind of prayers in the scriptures that I think are dangerous, because they're dangerous in the sense that if God's going to take you seriously, they're pretty radical. And they have change dripping all over them. When I was a younger man in school, in college, studying for the pastor, I remember this prayer as a prayer that the professor said, if you don't pray this prayer with honesty, you're never going to be fully whom God intended you to be. Now, the whole 139th Psalm is a beautiful psalm, isn't it? Those of you that have worked through it before, it's so beautiful. This is about, you knit me together in my mother's womb, and I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And it's all about praising God for the intricacies of life and the goodness of God, and that He knows everywhere we go. He knows when we sit and rise. I can't get away from Him. Now that could be a complaint for some of us. I can't get away from you, God. I walk in a room, boom, you're there. You scare me sometimes, You're ahead of me like that. Or you could say, I love that about you, God. I am never alone from you. I don't have to fear things of life because I'm never in a room, a situation, a relationship where I'm by myself. You're with me all the time. And then toward the end of the chapter, he switches gears, and I'm not sure what's going on, but he gets so, as he's writing, he probably becomes so enthusiastic about what he's writing, that then he starts talking about all the people that oppose God and are opposing David, the psalmist. And he says, I hate them. I hate everybody who hates you, God. I hate it with a passion. So he's just this passionate guy. And then, and because you have to read between the lines, because they don't always write commentary in this, you have to read between the lines. Part of what I read here in between the lines, let's start at verse number 21 of 139 Psalm. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. And it's almost like an afterthought. Maybe it's because he was shocked to hear himself actually say those words. Words like hate. And there have been times when I have said something that I thought was a pretty holy thing to say, or I felt righteous in my saying it, self-righteous. And then all of a sudden it's almost as if I'm confronted with the truth of what I just said or thought or did that I thought was okay. And then started doubting. Maybe I'm not supposed to feel that feeling. Maybe that wasn't so righteous after all. Maybe that was sinful, what I thought about that person. And so he closes this with that shocking prayer in verse 23 and 24. Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. He basically breaks his prayer down into 4 invitations to God. The first invitation is to search David, search his heart. He says, search me, know my heart. Now, what's in my heart? things that reside in my heart. Now, oftentimes, my heart is where I can hide some things. Where I can talk how I really think about you, Eric. I tell you what I think about you, but there are times, and this is not true, I'm just using it, by the way, just in case I'm rattling you today. You know, when I think about you, I say something to you, but you can almost always tell with people whether they're conning you or sales jobbing you, when they're glad-handing you and hey, how you doing? Good to see you again. And you know in their heart, they are not happy to see you right now. You just get that sense about you. So the heart is the place that's kind of the real thoughts that we think. It's your motives. There have been times when in my relationship with Anita, if I can continue that comparison, in my relationship with my wife, where, and I don't know if it's because I'm just a human or because I'm a male human, that I say things, and after they come out, that's not exactly how I meant them to sound.
Amen.
You know what I mean? You don't say amen to this stuff now. You know what I mean? It's where you put it out there and you meant it in a much more positive light than what it actually came out like. And there have been times with Anita I've had to say, honey, you know my heart. And what I mean by that is, you know that I don't feel that negativity at all inside of me. You know how I really feel about you. And sometimes my mouth gets out on ahead of my heart and it says stupid things. Well, the problem with that is, the guys just said, the lives are wrong. To me, the two are much more closely linked together than what I care to admit sometimes. And sometimes my words, and I have a smart enough wife to remind me that our words aren't said in a vacuum. They're not said out of context. That there's something there that maybe we need to explore. And so when David says to God, I want you to search me and know my heart, what he's saying, I want you to know my intentions. Go all the way past the words, past the actions, and get all the way down. And so when I say, I hate them, God, I hate them with a passion. Is it okay that I do that? Or am I thinking wrong about those folks? God, when people hate you, do you hate them back? Well, I've come to learn from God that probably not. The Bible actually says that I love them when they nailed Jesus to the cross. Didn't he pray a prayer that said, Father, would you forgive them? They don't know what they're doing. In other words, God gives a lot of grace. And there are places in my life when I'm just not very graceful. I don't give a lot of room for that kind of way. And I think it's good every once in a while to pray that dangerous prayer that says, search me, God, to check out my motives, my belief system. Because, remember, a performance review is almost exclusively about alignment. Remember that? Back to the beginning. It's about aligning yourself with the mission, the purpose of what that company is all about. That's why this prayer is so radical, because it says, Lord, I'm not just anybody. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. If I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, that word follower implies you're taking me somewhere. We're on a journey, but it's a journey of your creation, not of mine. And so I'd like to know every once in a while how I'm doing on the journey. Have I allowed mission drift to kick into my life? Or am I not thinking right here? Or what are the things that hold me back? And so he first says, go ahead and search me. Do a performance review of my life by searching my motives, my heart. Then the second thing, did you notice that the writer says, test me? Now this is different. Search me gives someone permission to kind of go through your filing system and go through your heart's intentions and put a spotlight on it. Another thing, though, is to say to that person, go ahead and actually test me on this. Put me to a test and see how I hold up in certain situations. But what he says is here, test me in the area of my anxieties. Right? Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Anxiety is the opposite of faith, in my opinion. Fear is the opposite of faith. when I'm fearful or when I'm anxious, I'm not employing what I know about God in my life. When that thing or that person or that situation overtakes me, it's also overtaking what I know about God. And I have to get back. I have to realign what my faith in God is. So my anxieties have to do with issues of trust and the things that I fear, the people that I fear, or situations that I fear. I sat last night we were at a family wedding, and I sat in the reception, and I was visiting with one of my relatives, and she and her husband just went through a terrible 3 or 4 months, where his mother suddenly died. 3 weeks later, his eldest sister suddenly died. And it really rattled the whole family. They weren't ready for either of those things to happen. And when you have that 1-2 punch within 3 weeks, and you're barely catching your breath from the first one in the funeral, in which the daughter was at the mom's funeral, and then 3 weeks later, the daughter succumbs. It really threw their faith in God, their faith in each other. Their marriage became more tense. There was a bitterness started to step in. And she told me last night that they actually had to slow down and think for a minute. What's the root of where we are right now? Because we couldn't control mom and sister's death. But we do have some measure of checking out why we're reacting the way we are now. What's the real thing going on? And for her, it was all these anxieties. For her and her husband both, it was all these anxieties were starting to overtake them about, wow, if my mom and my sister could go that quickly, then is there anything in life that is rock solid? And they had concluded, unbeknownst to each other, that there was nothing in life rock solid, that they were using those 2 examples as things that said, that, so it's going to be bad. I mean, anything can happen. And once they finally verbalized it, put it out there, which is what a job performance review does, right? Put it out there, then they could acknowledge that that's actually not true. There are things in our lives, the foundation of our life through Jesus Christ, and that's the great hope that we have. Even God said in Jeremiah, he said that, I've got plans for you. Now, they're not plans to harm you. And sometimes it feels like the harm is set in, but they're plans to give you a hope and a future. And they had to realize that they were lacking that trusting in God by focusing almost exclusively on what they had just lost, and were feeling overwhelmed by that. So search me, search my motives, test me at the places that I'm most anxious, and get them aligned. If my motives are to be aligned, then my anxieties ought to get aligned with what I know about following Jesus Christ. And then thirdly, he says, see in me any offensive ways. Now this has to do with my words and my actions. So we've been dealing with motives, and we've been dealing with our anxious thoughts. Now we're starting to deal with the overflow of our motives and our thoughts. That is, this is where we go with our actions. What we say, what we do, places we go, the way that we treat other people. This is getting raw. This is a dangerous prayer, because you're saying to your Father in heaven, you're saying to the Lord Jesus Christ, I want so much to align with the kind of life you want me to live, that I don't want it just to be theoretical in my prayer time with you. I want it to be very practical when I walk out the door every morning, when I go to school, when I go to work, in my neighborhood, with my family. I want it to show up in how I live my life. My actions, my words. And then lastly, he says, and then lead me. And he says here, the way everlasting. I've come to a conclusion in my life that there are 2 ways, 2 paths that live, even as a Christian, that there are 2 paths I can choose every morning. Path number 1 is the way temporal. The way it is now. And the now is defined by whatever's happening now, my 5 senses. but I can smell and taste and see, touch. But the Bible says that the Lord puts in all of our hearts a sense of eternity. And there's a longing in my heart for something that outlives the regularities of whatever my life is at this moment. And I think the most dangerous piece of this prayer is also stated in the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is an interesting prayer, by the way. Right in the middle of it, it says, "May your will be done here on earth, just like it's being done in heaven." That's a crazy prayer if you really mean it. Just like, Father, when you speak and your will gets done in heaven, that's what I want here in the temporary place, the place of the five senses. And to me, that's where heaven and earth touch. When I leave church this morning, I'm going to encounter drivers on the highway. Maybe more honestly, they'll be encountering me. How do I handle that? When somebody kind of cuts you off. I've begun to see the way I live my life, the way that I treat people, the things that get me passionate, that they have more of an eternal nature or implication to them. That I'm not just a person of planet Earth. I'm actually a citizen of a kingdom that's going to last forever. Amen. And I don't just want to wait till then before I start living right. You know what I mean? I don't want to wait just till then. I mean, is that my best hope? That as long as I'm in this life, I'm just going to screw it up, I'm going to mess it up, I'm going to be lousy. But thank God there's heaven when I won't have to screw it up anymore. Really? Is that the best of the Bible and your relationship with Jesus offers you? What the Bible actually says, that when a person becomes a Christian, they become a brand new person. Amen. Old things pass away. The new starts to come. Now, it's not going to be fully new. That is called heaven, where perfection sets in. But I want to grow. I'm so hungry at this stage of my life. I'm more hungry, I think, than I've ever been. To invite the Lord to do a performance review pretty regularly with me. I pray this prayer, by the way, every morning. It's a simple prayer. Search me, O God, know my heart. Test me to see what makes me anxious. See in me any offensive ways. And lead me in the paths that have everlastingness to them. I pray that prayer every morning. That God might use that day to push me both to align with who He wants me to be and help me to continue to grow in who I know I should be in Jesus Christ. In a moment, we're going to be taking Holy Communion. What I'd like this morning is that the bread and the cup will not only symbolize the love of Jesus for us, and it does. In fact, it primarily does that, right? That He would allow His body to be bruised in horrific ways for you. That He would allow His blood, which blood contained in the body is good. Blood that runs out of the body is bad. He chose to allow His blood to run out of His body. The Bible says they didn't take His life from Him. He gave it. Big difference between the two. They didn't murder Him. He didn't kill Him that day. The Bible says He gave His life. So that's the first thing. We're going to thank Him for that. But then secondly, we're going to use the bread and the cup as a statement from our hearts to Him. May we live the same spirit of that we live for You. That our greatest joy in life is when we leave this church today, that we're followers of Jesus Christ, aligning our lives with who He is and how He lived His life for other people. Let's pray together as we prepare for Holy Communion. Father, I thank You for this moment that we can take the bread and cup, and may You, Lord, be present among us. Lord, might we sense Your presence even as we ingest what seems pretty normal, a piece of bread and a cup of juice. But Lord, anything You touch is anything but normal, including the ordinariness of bread and juice. May it taste like grace to us. And may we find continual forgiveness and love from You. as we partake together around this common table.